Welcome to the Explainer. So, let's dive right into a truly fascinating topic today. We're going to explore the dynamic and honestly perfectly balanced way our source material describes the attributes of God. It's really a journey into understanding the divine without falling into those common human misconceptions that so often cloud our spiritual vision. To make sense of all this, we're going to break these concepts down into 5 quick sections. First, how do we know God? Second, the formula of negation and affirmation. Third, God's active presence. Fourth, the balance of transcendence and immanence. And finally, the limits of human language. Let's get started.
All right, section 1. How do we know God? Starting from the creation to the creator.
The source material hits us with a critical point right out of the gate. We always have to look upwards from the creation to the creator, rather than trying to start from the infinite down. And this actually challenges us on a deeply personal level. Do you believe in God 100%? Now, I know it sounds like a simple question, but do we subconsciously divide his attributes? Like, do we go through life acting like otherworldly forces, people, or random circumstances are actually the things controlling our destiny?
Think about the number 50 for a second, because it illustrates a pretty fascinating historical problem. The source points out that historical polytheists didn't actually completely deny God. No, instead, they split him 50-50. They inappropriately took the exclusive powers of the divine and basically handed them out to other things, whether that was nature or statues or human rulers. So the real danger isn't always outright denial, right? More often than not, it's dilution.
Which brings us to our second section, the formula of negation and affirmation, clearing the mind.
This method, which is traditionally known as nefi ve ispat, is exactly how we fix that percentage problem we just talked about. It's this incredibly active process of clearing your mind of false idols before you can affirm the true God. Think about the duality here. The fundamental statement of Islamic faith, La ilaha illallah, actually starts with a negation, a firm no or law. You literally have to throw the worldly idols and distractions behind you first. Only after you do that do you reach the affirmation, the accept or illah, pulling that singular truth of God into your heart.
And this formula is so foundational, it actually structures entire chapters of Scripture. Take Surah Al-Kafirun, for example. It acts as the ultimate negation. It establishes an absolute, uncompromising no to false worship, which beautifully sets the stage for what comes next. Right after wiping the slate completely clean, we get Surah Al-Ikhlas, which acts as the affirmation, the ultimate yes to God's absolute oneness.
Moving right along to section 3, God's active presence. Focusing on involvement, not just existence.
Here is something I find genuinely captivating. The source text actually considers proving God's mere existence to be entirely redundant. And to understand why, just think about a few relatable everyday analogies. A dress requires a tailor, a building requires an architect, a book requires an author. The text argues that the human mind is fundamentally hardwired for cause and effect. Because of this built-in logical coding, absolute atheism is framed as a logical impossibility. We just intuitively know that an effect absolutely demands a cause. So the crucial point isn't if he exists, but how he interacts with us. The famous Ayatul Kursi describes a God who neither slumbers nor sleeps. And the source notes a really clever piece of human psychology here. Sometimes, deep down, people secretly wish for a distant, sleeping God who conveniently forgets their flaws. But an active, non-sleeping God is strictly necessary. Think about it. If the Creator slept for even a fraction of a moment, the entire cosmos would instantly collapse into total chaos. And this active presence is emphasized absolutely everywhere. Let me give you a surprising fact. The phrase, "Which of your Lord's favors will you deny?" is repeated 31 times in Surah Ar-Rahman. But the source explains this isn't just some mindless repetition. It's incredibly dynamic. Every single one of those 31 repetitions serves a very precise purpose, to negate the denial of the specific, unique blessing that was mentioned immediately before it.
All right, section 4, the balance of transcendence and immanence. Tanzih versus Tashbih.
This right here is perhaps the most crucial balancing act in our entire discussion. It's all about avoiding the extreme dangers of making God entirely unknowable on one hand or way too human-like on the other. First up, let's talk about Tanzih. This is absolute transcendence, basically placing God completely outside of creation. But we really have to be careful here. Taking this to the absolute extreme creates a totally unreachable, deistic deity who doesn't interact with the world at all.
Now, flip that over to the exact opposite extreme, and we have Tashbih. This is immanence, which means describing God through physical, worldly forms.
The real danger here is that excessive immanence leads to absurd claims of physical incarnation. The source references historical deviations across various traditions where believers are actually told that they too can literally become gods, basically reducing the divine to a mere object. So think about it like two theological ditches you desperately want to avoid. On one side, extreme Tanzih leaves us with an entirely uninvolved deistic God. On the other side, extreme Tashbih completely reduces God to an anthropomorphic physical form. What the source text does so beautifully is navigate right down the middle between these two extremes. It completely refuses both the distant, uninvolved God and the physically incarnate God, finding this incredibly vibrant spiritual balance.
So how does the scripture actually maintain this balance? Well, listen to this pivotal quote. Nothing is like him. This is the ultimate statement of Tanzih. It's a profound mental reset. It literally means that whatever image, shape, or concept happens to pop into your limited human mind, you can be absolutely certain that is definitively not God.
But then, right on the heels of that, we get this remarkable counterweight verse. He is actively involved every moment. This acts as the perfectly balanced Tashbih. It reminds us that even though God is unlike anything we can possibly imagine, He isn't just sitting far away up in the clouds. He is intimately, passionately, and actively involved in every single moment of our daily lives.
And that brings us to our fifth and final section, the limits of human language, finding a spiritual smile.
We have to remember something really important here. Scripture is ultimately forced to use finite human language to describe an entirely infinite reality. To brilliantly illustrate where that language hits its limit, the source points out a really subtle distinction. We naturally and intuitively accept that God sees and hears, right? But our souls instinctively reject the idea of God tasting or smelling. Why is that? Well, because seeing and hearing don't strictly require biological organs in a metaphysical sense. But tasting and smelling, those actions imply a physical dependency. They imply a biological need and a deficiency. And our intuition just naturally knows that the infinite lacks absolutely nothing.
Because of this linguistic limitation, language is often designed to neutralize our human ego. Take this incredibly beautiful verse. You threw not when you threw, but Allah threw. It's a profound reminder that while we absolutely have to make the effort, believers must acknowledge the divine hand in all of their worldly successes. It teaches us that the ultimate force behind our achievements is not just our own ability.
There's this beautiful historical quote that perfectly sums this up. The mind is a scale that cannot weigh an infinite mountain. True comprehension of God isn't about solving some complex mathematical equation. It is about humbly recognizing our absolute inability to fully box Him in with our small, limited human minds. Now, I want to inject a really warm, kind of surprising note here before we wrap up. While certain medieval religious traditions actually considered laughing to be a sin, the Islamic tradition highlighted in our source material takes the exact opposite approach. It considers a simple, genuine smile to be an act of charity. It reflects God's grace. Just think about that for a second. A smile is literally an act of worship.
Which leaves us with one final provocative question to chew on today. Are you limiting the infinite God to the small scale of your own mind? Are you truly embracing this perfect, dynamic balance of an active, unmatched creator? Or are you subconsciously shrinking the divine to comfortably fit inside your human limitations? I really want you to think deeply about that. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope it brought some incredible clarity to these deep concepts. Keep learning and keep asking those big questions.